Morning everyone. Today we will discuss a short story, A Horse and Two Goats by R.K. Narayan. So by the end of this video, you will be able to learn about the author R.K. Narayan, understand the summary and theme of the story, A Horse and Two Goats, understand the setting of the story, A Horse and Two Goats, and express the story in your own words. Let us read about the author R.K. Narayan. R.K. Narayan was born in Chennai, India in 1906 in a working-class South Indian family. His father was a school headmaster. He was interested in English literature since he was very young. He is best known for his novels such as Mr. Sampath, 1949, The Financial Expert, 1952, The Guide, 1958, for which he received the Sahitya Academy Award in 1961, and The Man-Eater of Malgudi, 1961, and the stories Malgudi Days, 1982. Let us discuss the story A Horse and Two Goats in brief. A Horse and Two Goats is a short story by R.K. Narayan set in one of the tiniest villages in India, Kritam. The main part of the story is presented to the readers in the form of a comic and humorous dialogue between Muni, a Tamil-speaking poor villager, and an English-speaking businessman from New York. The two men trying to communicate cannot seem to understand each other because of the lack of knowledge in others' language and culture. It is with their troubled communication that Narayan tries to explore the conflicts between rich and poor, as well as between Indian and Western culture. Let us discuss the story in detail. Life in Kritam. The story is set in a tiny South Indian village named Kritam. It depicts a picture of poverty in which the protagonist Muni lives. The children, what is the meaning of protagonist? Protagonist means the principal character or the main character. Of the 30 houses in the village, only one, the big house, is made of bricks. The others, including Muni's, are made of bamboo thatch, straw and mud, etc. There is no running water and no electricity. The children, what is the meaning of thatch? Means a plant material. The children, the story is set in a small village, Kritam, that is in India. There is just one brick cement house in the village known as the big house. And the others, including Muni's, are made of bamboo, thatch and mud. There is no running water and no electricity. Muni's wife cooks their typical breakfast of a handful of millet flour over a fire in mud pot. Millet, cereal. On this day, Muni has shaken down 6 drumsticks from drumstick tree growing in front of his house, and he asks his wife to prepare them for him in a sauce. The children, what is the meaning of drumstick? Drumstick is a horseradish. She agrees, provided he can get the other ingredients, none of which they have in the house: rice, dal, that is lentils, spices, oil, and a potato. The children, Muni, as I've told you, is the protagonist of the story. His wife often serves him salted millet flour in boiled water. This morning, Muni manages to get 6 drumsticks from the drumstick tree that is in front of his house, and he wants to have them in sauce. Muni's wife agrees and asks him to bring other ingredients like rice, dal, spices, oil, and a potato. Muni's poverty. Muni and his wife lead a poor life, but they have not always been poor. There was a time when he had a flock of 40 sheep and goats, but life has not been kind to him and his animals. Years of drought, a great famine, and an epidemic ruined Muni's flock. Since he belonged to the lowest of India's castes, He was never allowed to go to school or learn a trade. What is the meaning of drought? It means a long period of dryness, famine, and extreme scarcity of food. An epidemic, a disease affecting a large number of population. The children Muni and his wife were poor. But Muni was once an affluent cattle grazer. He had a flock of 40 sheep and goats. But his fortunes declined gradually. Years of drought, a great famine, and an epidemic ruined his flock. Moreover, he belonged to the lowest of India's castes. Hence, he wasn't sent to school and he wasn't allowed to learn a trade. At present, he is left with 2 goats. Muni and his wife have no children. Their only income is from the odd jobs his wife does at the big house. Children, what is the meaning of odd jobs? Means casual piece of work, especially one of a domestic nature. Muni has exhausted his credit at every shop. Now when he goes to get the items his wife requires to cook the drumsticks, he is insulted and sent away. There is no food in the house. Muni's wife asks him to go away with goats and fast today. Now, children, what is the meaning of exhausted? Means finished completely. Now children, Muni is now left with only 2 goats, and that too were very skinny and they were not able to be sold or eaten. Muni had no children. His riches is past now. So their only source of income is from the odd jobs such as his wife grinding corn in the big house or sweeping or scrubbing somewhere. Muni has exhausted his credit at every shop. Muni's wife asks him to get some food stuff to cook the drumsticks in sauce. When Muni asks a local shopkeeper to give him the food items on credit to prepare sauce, he is sent away, humiliated. Since there is no food in the house, Muni's wife gets angry and sends him away with the goats. She says that he needs to fast till the evening and it will do him good. Muni takes the goats to the usual spot, which is a few miles away. It is a grassy spot near the highway. There he sits in the shade of a life-size statue of a horse and a warrior and watches trucks and buses go by. Now children, life-size means of the size of the original. The statue is made of weather-beaten clay and has stood in the same spot for 70 years. Now children, what is the meaning of weather-beaten? Means damaged by exposure to weather. Muni takes the goat along and the memories of his affluent past makes him nostalgic. Soon Muni reaches on the outskirts and leaves his goats to graze on the grass near the highway. Muni himself sits on the pedestal of the horse statue for the rest of the day and watches the lorries and buses passing through. The horse is made of weather-beaten clay and stands beside a warrior. The statue has stayed there for more than 70 years. Arrival of an American. As Muni watches the trucks and buses, a yellow station wagon comes down the road and pulls over. Now children, what is the meaning of pulls over? Means to steer one's vehicle to the side of a road. Red-faced American dressed in khaki clothing comes out and asks Muni about the nearest gas station. There he notices the statue which he finds marvelous. Children, what is the meaning of marvelous? Marvelous means of the highest quality. As Muni watches the trucks and buses and waits for the appropriate time to head home, he notices a new sort of yellow wagon that looked like a motor car and a bus coming down the road and pulling over. A red-faced foreigner in khaki clothes gets down from the car and asks Muni if there is any gas station nearby. The man then notices the horse statue and exclaims, "Marvelous!" Muni wants to run away as he thinks that this foreigner in khaki must be a policeman or a soldier. But Muni is too old to run away. The two begin to converse with each other. Both do not understand each other's language. The American says, Namaste, how do you do? Muni responds with the only English word he knows, yes, no. The children, since Muni does not understand the foreigner, he assumes him to be a policeman or a soldier because of his khaki dress. And his first impulse is to run away. But Muni is too old to run away anymore, and he cannot leave the goats as well. The two men then begin to converse in their respective languages. The American greets Muni and says, Namaste, how do you do? To which Muni replies in only English he knows, yes, no. Muni's apprehensions about the American. What is the meaning of apprehensions? Suspicions. The American is a businessman from New York City. He lights a cigarette and offers one to Muni. He offers Muni his business card, but Muni gets scared as he thinks that is the warrant of some kind. Muni gives a long explanation of his innocence of whatever crime the man is investigating. The children, what is the meaning of warrant? Warrant is a precept or writ issued by a competent magistrate authorizing an officer to make an arrest or search. Now, what is the meaning of investigating? It means conducting an official inquiry. The children, the American, who is a businessman from New York City, lights a cigarette. He offers one to Muni and tells him that he has come from New York. He takes out his wallet to present Muni his business card. Muni, fearing it to be an arrest warrant, moves back. Muni, to prove his innocence to khaki-dressed man, launches into a long explanation in Tamil of whatever crime is being investigated. The American asks questions about the horse statue which he would like to buy. While talking to Muni, he narrates a bad day at work when he had to work for 4 hours without elevators and electricity. He is unaware that Muni has to live this kind of life every day. By now, the American is convinced that Muni is the owner of the statue which he is determined to buy. What is the meaning of determined? It means firmly resolved. So the American questions Muni about the horse statue he is interested in buying. The tourist repeats his questions about the statue, such as when it was made. He also tells Muni of a bad day at work when, due to power failure, he was stuck for 4 hours without elevators and air conditioners. He is ignorant that Muni lived such life every day. By this time, the American is convinced that Muni is the owner of the statue which he wants to buy. Muni's interpretation of the statue. What is the meaning of interpretation? It means the action of explaining the meaning of something. Now, Muni gives some information about the statue to the American that he had from his father and grandfather. I get a kick out of every word you utter, the American says. Though he does not understand Muni's language, he enjoys the words. The children, Muni at this point in time gives some information about the statue to the American that he himself had from his father and grandfather. The American doesn't understand what Muni says, but he enjoys every word of Muni and says, I get a kick of every word you utter. Muni reminisces his impoverished childhood days. The American laughs heartily. Reminisces, children, means recalls. Impoverished, poor. Muni interprets the statue. This is our guardian. At the end of Kali Yuga, this world and all other worlds would be destroyed, and the Redeemer will come in the shape of a horse. Redeemer, Savior. Now, children, Muni remembers about his poor childhood days. The foreigner does not understand him but laughs heartily. Muni explains the principles of Hinduism to the American and the reincarnation of the Kalki. He says that the statue of the horse is their guardian. At the end of the Kali Yuga, this world and all the other worlds will be destroyed, and the Savior will come in the shape of a horse. The American says, I assure you, this will have the best home in the USA. I'll push away the bookcase. The TV may have to be shifted. I don't see how that can interfere with the party. We'll stand around him and have our drinks. It is clear that even if the two had understood each other's words, they would not have understood each other's worlds. What is the meaning of interfere? Interfere means interrupt. Now, children, the foreigner, without having a hint of what Muni was saying, assures him that once bought, he would keep the statue with utmost care in his living room in his house in the USA. He visualizes that he'll push away the bookcase and shift the TV to keep the horse. He feels that it won't interrupt their party. They'll stand around it and have drinks. Now, children, the two of them may have understood each other's words, but they would not have understood each other's worlds. The American gesture and the confusion. Finally, the American pushes 100 rupees into Muni's hand. This money is 20 times more than Muni's debt with the shopkeeper. The American considers that he has bought the horse and Muni believes that he has just sold his goats. Muni goes home to give the money to his wife, while the American flags down a truck, gets help to break the horse off his pedestal, and drives away with his purchase. Children, what is the meaning of pedestal? It means the base of a statue. Now, children, finally, the American shows Muni a 100-rupee currency note, and Muni laughs at himself, thinking that the man is asking for a change. The money is 20 times more than Muni's debt with the shopkeeper. But as soon as the foreigner shows some interest in his goats, Muni feels that his dream to build up a small shop is to be fulfilled. He thinks that the American wants to buy his goats with the money. The American at the end believed that he had bought the horse statue, whereas Muni thought he had just got rid of his goats for money. Muni goes back to his home and the American stops a truck and gets the horse off the pedestal and goes away with his purchase. Muni's wife does not believe his story. Her suspicion is confirmed when the goats find their way home. At the end of the story, Muni's wife shrieks and says, "If you have thieved, the police will come tonight and break your bones. Don't involve me. I'll go away to my parents." The children, Muni comes home to present the money to his wife and tells her that he has sold their goats to a foreigner. The goats follow Muni back home and his wife becomes suspicious. She then accuses him of stealing the money. She warns him that if he has stolen the money, the police will come and break his bones and she will go back to her parents' home. The children, let us read the setting. The short story takes place in a tiny village named Kritam. Its 4 streets are lined with about 30 mud and thatch huts and one big house made of brick and cement. Women use clay pots and clay ovens to cook food. There is no running water and electricity. So children, this particular story is set in and around Kritam, probably the tiniest of India's 700 villages. It is a village that consists of fewer than 30 houses, only one of them built from brick and cement. The story is set in rural surrounding and it allows the readers to perceive rural life and its ways. There are total of 4 streets with 30 houses with a shop for foodstuff and other items in the 3rd street. There is no electricity, no running water. Women too use clay pots and clay ovens to cook food. After some time, the action takes place at the spot which is a few miles away from the village. It is a grassy spot near the highway. There stands the statue of a horse and warrior. The meeting between Muni and American takes place at this spot. The rest of the story, children, is set on the outskirts of the village where Muni takes his goats to graze. The main part of the story takes place on the edge of the village where Muni sits on the pedestal of the statue. This is the place where American and Muni meet. Now, children, let us read the theme of the story. In the short story, A Horse and Two Goats, the author presents a clash between Indian and Western cultures. The two main characters, Muni and the American businessman, represent two different cultures. Muni represents the Indian culture and the American businessman represents the American culture. The main theme of the story, A Horse and Two Goats, is clash of cultures. It is East-West opposition which is reflected through the troubled communication between Muni and the American. Muni represents Indian culture while the American represents American culture. Muni is poor, uneducated Hindu while the American is wealthy, educated Christian. As a good Hindu, Muni calmly accepts fate while the American endeavors to change his life. Each man is ignorant of the other's way of life. Endeavors means makes efforts and ignorant means unaware. Now, children, on the one hand, Muni, the representative of typical Indian native, is poor, rural and uneducated. He knows no English. He has accepted his fate, whereas the American is wealthy, urban and educated, and therefore endeavors to change his life. Both of them are ignorant of the other's way of life. Muni speaks Tamil while the American businessman speaks English. The two are unable to communicate with each other. Muni speaks about his own life while the American speaks about his own life. It leads to confusion. At the end of their encounter, each man has what he wants and neither has lost anything of value. So the East-West opposition is highlighted through Muni and the American conversing in their respective languages. Muni speaks Tamil and the American speaks English, which leads to a confusion. The entire short story is a conversation between them, and this conversation builds up to a climax when by the end, Muni believes that the American wants to buy his goats and the American thinks that he has bought the horse. Each of them gets what he wants and loses nothing of value. Both Muni and the American businessman differ in their respective level of wealth. Muni is poor and lives in a house made of bamboo, thatch, straw, mud, etc. While the American businessman is rich and lives in a comfortable house. The children, Muni and the American differ in levels of wealth as well. The opening of the story shows how desperately poor Muni is and emphasize that even in his time of prosperity, his standard of living was still below than that of the Americans. He lives in a house made of bamboo, thatch, straw and mud, whereas the American lives in a comfortable house. Muni does not have formal education because he belongs to the lower caste. He has not travelled beyond his village and he likes to watch trucks and buses go by on the highway in order to have a sense of belonging to a larger world. But he has a lot of knowledge of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. He gained it by listening to speakers at the temple. A Horse and Two Goats also explores the different ways that a person can be educated. Muni had no formal education. He grew up as a member of a lower caste when only the highest caste could attend the school. He has not travelled beyond his village and he likes to watch trucks and buses go by on highway a few miles away so that he can have a sense of belonging to a larger world. He has some knowledge of the two major religious texts, that is the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, which he has learned by acting in plays and by listening to preachers at the temple. The American, on the other hand, has received education. He possesses a large number of books, but both have different ways of looking at things. Muni tries to tell him the importance or the significance of the horse statue, but the American regards it only as a living room decoration. The children possesses means to have, and significance means importance. The American, on the other hand, has had the benefits of an American education. He has a room full of books that he values as objects, but there is no evidence that he values what is inside them. On one level, he is familiar with the larger world around him in a way that Muni will never be. The uneducated Muni tries to tell him the significance of the horse statue, but the American sees it only as a living room decoration. That is all for the day today. For your homework, you will read and revise summary and theme of the story A Horse and Two Goats. Thank you.